I believe that the U.S. Capitol insurrectionists deserve our forgiveness. Let me start by saying that I fully believe that they committed crimes. More than one, most of them, or maybe all of them. And I'm not here to justify any of that. But there's been something about the national response to this whole event, the March on the Capitol, the occupation of the Capitol, that has just made my conscience so unsettled. And it's taken me a long time to figure out what that is. And I think I finally figured it out. There's been a lot of talk about how these people were duped. They were given bad information. They were just straight up lied to, and they believed it. There's also been a lot of talk about how what these people ultimately did was a crime. I believe both of these facts. What I don't see a lot of in the public dialogue is a compassionate connection between those two thoughts. Let me give you a story. I'll tell you a little story. In 1938, there was a radio host who had a play called War of the Worlds. He was given this play, and he read it on broadcast without prefacing it as a play. So as a result, a ton of people heard it and panicked. They literally thought that New York City was being attacked by Martians. Here's another story. When I was a kid, I was told that there was a huge fat man in a sleigh being pulled by reindeer in the sky, delivering presents to every kid on Earth overnight. There's a parallel between these two stories and the U.S. Capitol insurrectionists. The parallel is the lesson, which is that when you believe your source of information, it is extremely easy to also believe the information that comes from that source. Now, the mainstream media has a big problem, right? Which is that all these people, I'm willing to put a lot of money, or I don't have a lot of money, but I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that the people who marched on the Capitol are not people who believe in the mainstream media. But here's my thought. If somebody doesn't trust me, if you don't trust me, is it your fault? Or is it more responsible and frankly more empowering for me to say that, hey, maybe there are factors within my control that have resulted in the fact that I lack credibility with you. And that's a reckoning that I think the mainstream media needs to go through, and a reflection they need to have. Let me just make this lighting a little more beautiful. Shouldn't have lost my train of thought here. Got it. Let's walk through two quick intellectual exercises. If a news source that I considered credible, and for me it'd be the New York Times, I read it all the time and I tend to believe what they say as truth. If the New York Times reported that Al-Qaeda had infiltrated Washington, D.C., and were occupying it, I would be alarmed. I would be freaked out. Totally. And more importantly, my point is that I would believe it, right? Now let's just say, here's exercise number 2. Let's just say that I know for a fact that Al-Qaeda has infiltrated Washington, D.C. They've invaded, they're occupying, and so forth. The question I have to ask myself is, would I have the courage to give up the life that I have, which I love, risk it all, pick up arms, go to D.C. to stand in defense of our country? I would like to believe that I would have the courage to do that. I think I would only find out in the moment. Now, something that's very interesting to me about the insurrectionists is that when you watch their videos, they all talk about doing what they did for patriotic reasons. They are not Al-Qaeda. They aren't out there saying death to America, death to Americans. They are Americans, and they came from all around America to Washington, D.C. for what they felt was patriotism, was defense of our country. And I'm not saying that what they did was right, because it was actually incredibly wrong. But when I walk myself through this series of logic, where I say like, yeah, the source I believed said this, and then I thought it to be true. Now, there's a very small gap that you have to make. When you really believe something, you really, really, really believe it, it's just a tiny step to convincing yourself that you know it to be true. And so if I felt that I knew it to be true, that America was under attack, and I went down to defend our country, and moreover, if the president encouraged me to, right? I mean, in a weird way, it's almost a courageous act. And again, I am not defending what they did, because what they ultimately did was wrong. But it begs some consideration. Now, I'm not making this video and saying that these people deserve our forgiveness in a legal, technical sense, because I don't think I'm qualified to make that call here. I will say, though, that I am glad that President Trump did not pardon them, because I think if he pardoned one of them, he would have had to pardon all of them. And I do believe that they were 100%, they were individuals who were bad apples, who are evil, genuinely evil people who knew what they were doing was wrong, who did have violent intent and completely planned to kill lawmakers and commit acts of terrorism. And they would have gotten pardoned too, and they certainly don't deserve that. The other reason why I'm glad he didn't pardon is because it gives the rest of America the opportunity to be the ones to give that forgiveness. Right? If he had pardoned them, he would say, he'd be showing solidarity. He would be saying, I understand, and we're all on the same team here. I think this is an interesting opportunity for America to find grace in our hearts, to see a little bit more perspective of where they might be coming from. I know there are a lot of people who are making comparisons between what happened there and the treatment of those insurrectionists and what happened at Black Lives Matter protests. And I think that's a very interesting conversation to have. I don't have the cold tolerance to go through that now. But I do want to offer this thought. It's a quote by Martin Luther King. He says, if we do eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, then our nation will be blind and toothless. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening here, right? Yeah, I mean, I can't emphasize enough that I'm not in any way trying to justify their actions. I think it was completely wrong. But I do think that, we all deserve a little bit more compassion. In this weird world that we live in, we're so formed by, our perspectives are so formed by the people around us and factors that are maybe somewhat out of our control. And, yeah, and I don't know, just more compassion, you know? That's it from here. If you like this video, please like it. If you want to share it, please share it. If you want to support this channel, there's a link in the description. Above all, I ask that you love hard and live well, and I hope to see you in the next video.